Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliott Margolis, and I'm here with my special guest today, Elizabeth Dionne, who is running for Massachusetts State Treasurer. Welcome.
Elliott, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, I was looking online to get some information about what does the treasurer do and everything, and there's like no information. So I guess my first question is, you're running for treasurer, what are you going to do?
A lot. The first thing that your readers need to know, or I'm sorry, your viewers, is that the treasurer's office is the fourth most powerful office in Massachusetts. So the most powerful is Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano, followed by Senate President Karen Spilka, then followed by the governor, and then the treasurer. And you're right, nobody knows what the treasurer's office does, but it's hundreds of billions of dollars in assets and up to 20% of the state budget. And the reason nobody knows what the treasurer does is because the 12-year incumbent spends up to a third of her year in Florida, in her third home, literally not even in the state, literally attending meetings by telephone or Zoom. So it is on her that the people of Massachusetts don't know about this fourth most powerful office in the state. It's one of the many things that I want to do, is to be out and visible and present and educating people as to where their money's going. So I'm calling myself the taxpayer's treasurer because every dollar that comes through the treasurer's office has come from a taxpayer's pocket. And I need to remember that, and the voters need to know that I remember that.
Okay, so I know the treasurer is the head of the Mass Lottery.
Yes. And that's how most people will know the incumbent's name, is they'll see her name attached to the lottery. And in fact, funny thing, election year, she asked in this year's budget to have a 67% increase in her lottery budget. And the legislature, to their credit, said no. So she wanted to go from $6 million to $10 million. Funny thing, we know that's happened with a prior treasurer who increased lottery ads during an election year and actually ended up being criminally indicted for doing so. So it's not appropriate to ask the state legislature to use lottery ads to subsidize her reelection campaign. And the legislature, to their credit, said no. But backing up, you know about the lottery. So what makes this office so unusually powerful? So the treasurer oversees 13 different departments, some of which don't seem to have a lot of relation to the treasurer's office. One of the reasons it's so powerful is that the Democratic legislature, every time there was a Republican governor, would take something from the governor and give it to the treasurer. And that was mainly to preserve patronage jobs. So when Frank Sargent was the governor, that's when we adopted the lottery. So Frank didn't get the lottery. It went to Bob Crane, 27-year treasurer, notoriously corrupt, who became a multimillionaire as state treasurer. Then when Mitt Romney was governor, the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission got taken from the governor and given to the treasurer. Then when Charlie Baker was governor, the Cannabis Control Commission wasn't under his authority, it was largely under the treasurer's authority, where she spent 9 years botching that so badly that in April, the legislature, the House of Representatives, voted unanimously, 155-0. Her entire party voted against her to take it away because she'd done such a bad job. But this is someone who wants not just another term. We have her on record saying that she wants to beat Bob Crane's 27-year record. So on video, she said her family has long-lived genes and she plans to be in office for 28 years. Can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't make it up, but isn't that, I mean, what you've said really suggests that one-party rule in the state is not a good thing because there doesn't seem to be any checks and balances.
Absolutely, and Democrats actually acknowledge that. Because of her poor job performance, there are actually a number of Democrats who are enthusiastic about my candidacy. I am running, the treasurer's office isn't partisan, it's really about serving the people and making the trains run on time. It's an office that ought to be run efficiently and well and for the benefit of people, and that's not a partisan issue. But it is true, unfortunately, that one-party rule in Massachusetts has not served us well. Think how fast and how far our economic situation has deteriorated in the last 3.5 years. Everybody misses Charlie Baker, including the Democrats. And you could quibble with him on certain things, but he showed up every day. He ran a tight ship. We did not have fraud. The level of fraud that has happened in the past 3.5 years is shocking. And Massachusetts knows this. It's why 7 of our last 10 governors were Republicans. And I'm counting Ed King as an honorary 8th because he primaried Michael Dukakis as a fiscal conservative. So the voters of Massachusetts understand that this state does much better when there's checks and balances on Beacon Hill. One-party rule leads to the type of corruption that we have seen, including in the treasurer's office.
Well, talking about one-party rule, that reminds me of the audit.
Yes.
It's not the first time that the state legislature has said, yeah, I know the people voted for this, but we don't care. We're going to do what we want to do. And the first time, of course, was reducing the taxes, the income tax. And it seems to me that the philosophy of the state legislature is, well, if we increase the taxes, it's only like a cup of coffee a day. Well, a cup of coffee a day is now $3. Okay, so that's
or 5, if you depending on where you're buying it.
Or depending on what one you buy. But that's over $1,000 a year, and people on a fixed income can't afford that. And when is the state going to say, you know, we ought to be a little more efficient with our money?
Yeah. You've hit 2 different issues here. We know that the top 2 issues that people are voting on this year are affordability and accountability. And that's why suddenly the Democrats who are running have gotten religion on these 2 issues after ignoring them for 3.5 years. But let's deal with them one at a time. Let me start with accountability. 72% of us voted for a legislative audit. 82% now support it. It is unconscionable that the legislature refuses to open its books. Every dollar has come from a taxpayer's pocket. Every dollar should be accounted for. Every taxpayer has the right to know where those dollars are going. If I'm elected treasurer, I've promised 2 things. The first is that I will work cooperatively with Dionne DeZoglio, and I will be another voice on Beacon Hill supporting that brave, brave woman. She's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. It doesn't matter. We both care about the public, and we know that we both answer to the public. The other thing about transparency is part of the power of being a statewide elected official is that I can order an outside audit of the entire treasurer's department or treasurer's office. 13 departments, up to 20% of the state budget, hundreds of billions of dollars in both debt and pension investment funds. To my knowledge, the last time there was a complete outside audit done was 1990 when Joe Malone took over from Bob Crane. And Joe actually had outside auditors come in, 3 of what were then the big 6 accounting firms, and they did it for free. And that is amazing. And I would absolutely work with Dionne DeZoglio, but the legislature is starving her of resources. I don't know that she would have the resources to come in and do the type of top to bottom, completely independent outside audit that the treasurer's office badly needs after 12 years of under one-party rule.
Yeah,
But then affordability. So I said accountability. Affordability. You were talking about how the legislature says, oh, it's just a cup of coffee a day. We have an affordability crisis in this state. We are the 2nd most expensive state in the nation. We are hemorrhaging our 25 to 35-year-olds because they cannot afford to live in Massachusetts and raise their families here. In fact, that's what prompted me to step in. My husband and I have 4 adult children who cannot afford to live and raise their families here, and neither can their friends or classmates. If this state wants a future, we have got to resolve this problem now. The state treasurer actually has a much larger role in affordability than people realize. You mentioned the lottery. The lottery is the single largest source of unrestricted local aid. So the treasurer has a unique voice in advocating for more local aid for cities and towns. And I am coming after 10 years as a local official where we reformed everything, and it's not enough. And the reason it's not enough is the state has record-breaking revenues. The governor just signed a nearly $64 billion budget that'll probably grow to $70 billion by the time that she is done. Out of that budget, over the same period of time that the state's budget has doubled, local aid has only gone up 25%, which hasn't even kept pace with inflation. And yet we are tasked as local government officials with all the frontline responsibilities of education, fire, police, roads, sidewalks, water infrastructure. All of this has to happen. But the state doesn't give us the money to do it because they figure people will raise their own taxes and fund these frontline services, and then the state can keep all the money for who the heck knows what it's doing with $70 billion, because we don't have an audit. If we had an audit, then maybe we'd know and could clean up. I am absolutely confident, given the levels of fraud that we have seen come out week after week after week over the last year, we could easily find $1 to $2 billion to add back to local aid. If we did that, 70 cities and towns would not have to be asking for operating overrides this year. In Belmont, we had to eliminate DPW positions. We had eliminated fire positions. We'd eliminated police positions. That's not where I want to be. I want public safety. I want well-maintained roads and fields. But that's what we had to do to balance our budget. And again, we reformed everything. I used to say we would shake couch cushions for pennies, nickels, and dimes. There is no fat in Belmont's budget, and I think that's true of most budgets. Boston's an outlier. Boston, again, has record-breaking budgets, and they can't manage their money. But most cities and towns are facing true austerity. And as we continue to raise property taxes, we are literally pricing not only our young people out of the state, we're pricing our seniors out of the state. Seniors on a fixed income, they cannot afford this ongoing increase in property taxes. Massachusetts is fourth in the nation for property tax burden. And the governor's response is, oh, let's just gut Prop 2.5. No, that is not the answer. We gut Prop 2.5, we make our affordability problem even worse. The answer is for the state to pull out its pencil, do some calculations, set some priorities, and send more money back to cities and towns to fund all the mandates that the state gives us.
What do you do for a living?
So, interestingly, my background is an attorney, and I started out as a corporate attorney, a couple of big firms in Boston. But then my husband and I, 4 children, our second child has autism. And when he was young, it was pretty involved. So I ended up stepping back, and honestly, the best advocate for a child is an attorney. So he ultimately had a very good outcome, but it took a really long time, a lot of work, a lot of advocacy. And by the time he was stable, looked, and I mean, Massachusetts has been so good to my husband and me. I'm the 5th of 10 children. He's the 3rd son of a single mom who grew up on a farm. We are the American dream. We really are, and I am so grateful to Massachusetts. But I looked, and we didn't need more money. That's not what motivates me. And so I split my time evenly between local government and also working as a pro bono attorney for Massachusetts Advocates for Children, where I represented low-income special needs children. Because unfortunately, too often, if children don't have an attorney, they don't get the services to which they are legally entitled. And that was very, very rewarding work. And then on the town side, I started out as a town meeting member, and like many people, I became involved because of our rising tax burden, trying to figure out what's going on with our town's finances. So started out on town meeting and almost immediately went on the finance committee, where we would do a deep dive into the budget every year, and then became chair of the Community Preservation Committee, which administers funds for open space, recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. And again, very deep budget experience, very deep involvement there. And then because of all the work that I'd done on the Finance Committee and the Community Preservation Committee and reforms that I've been working for a long time, I ended up running for the Select Board, and where again, I gained a reputation as a relentless reformer. We reformulated our finance team, which had been very fractious and not getting along, and that doesn't work very well. So streamlined, reformulated our finance team. Did the same thing with a lot of town departments. Couldn't increase headcount, but found that there were ways that we could make our operations more efficient to deliver more public-facing services. Spent a long time pushing to get our pension investment fund fully invested in the state system because the state system actually had lower expenses and higher returns. And we did an analysis that showed by not investing in the state system, we lost $10 million of returns. So the past you can't change, but you can change going forward. And then probably one of the most important reforms, but kind of wonky, is I set up a permanent committee to look at 3 to 5 year budget forecasts. Because data can be really powerful. And once conservatives to progressives saw the same set of numbers of revenues and expenses, we realized our revenues were doing this and our expenses were doing this. And it was unsustainable. And so that really became the driver for us to bring down the growth in our cost curves. So it really led to revenue-based balanced budgeting, which hadn't really happened before. We would rob our various funds to try to balance the budget, and we really gained much more budget discipline. And then the final reform, before I finished my term in March, we pushed through zoning reform to make Belmont more business friendly, but also to allow more commercial development. Because Belmont has a 95% residential tax base, and you can't support
You
town services
survive on that at all.
And interestingly, that's why I ran for town meeting in the first place, was realizing we have this 95-5 residential commercial split. It took 10 years, but I'm stubborn and I play a long game.
Yeah, I know it should be at least 80-20 or 70-30.
Yeah.
The people in local government and in state government all think, well, gee, if you own a business, you got plenty of money, so we can tax you more. But it's the businesses that hire the people, it's the businesses that pay the taxes and get fewer services from the city. And so they don't understand. You know, I remember mayors in the city of Beverly saying, well, we're spending $16,000 a year on each individual student, so we must be doing something right. Well, wait a minute. You know, the amount of money is not the important thing. It's how you spend it. Mm-hmm. And I see in some of the interviews that I've done too, you know, I ask, do you understand the consequences of your actions? And I had my state senator on one time, and she was in favor of the $17 an hour minimum wage. And I said, do you know how much that would cost the employer?
Not
she
only
had
that,
no idea.
It also had a very negative impact on teen employment.
Well, that's it.
It really cut down.
They don't understand the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, good intentions are no substitute for rigorous economic analysis.
I remember reading on a Salada tea bag little hoo-ha, good intentions lead the road to hell. And it's true. You've got to understand not only what you want to do, but what are the consequences
What are the
of
unintended consequences? Yep, you're exactly right. But going back to the Treasurer's Office, there are actually a number of reforms that are very easy, where we clearly understand the consequences. So one of the really important things that the Treasurer does is oversee both the Retirement Board and the Pension Investment Fund. And in particular, the Pension Investment Fund, they had a good year, and assets went from about $121 billion to $129 billion, which is good. I mean, and again, the gentleman who runs the pension fund has done an excellent job. But we're still looking at a $33 to $40 billion gap between what we have and what we've promised in pension obligations to frontline workers. And yes, there are retirees of the UMass system who have $300,000 a year pensions, and that's ridiculous. But someone who's got a $43,000 a year pension, that's not a lot to live on. So we need to secure those pension promises that we've made. This past summer, the governor proposed taking $100 million out of that fund to give out in political grants that would never be returned. The treasurer was nowhere to be seen. The unions were furious because they understand the implications of taking money out of the fund. I stood with the unions against this very irresponsible act because who would have to make up the difference? The taxpayers. So it was really the governor trying to impose a $100 million tax without calling it a tax. So the legislature did back down. They did take that provision out of the economic development bill. But I have vowed, this is not a line in the sand, it's a line in concrete for me, that as the state treasurer, no one touches that fund. It is off limits. because every dollar that gets taken out is a dollar that has to come out of a taxpayer's pocket. We need to be laser focused on maximizing returns to, again, guarantee the promises that we've made, but minimize the impact on taxpayers' pockets, because that is a debt that's owed. And that's a debt in addition to the $120 billion in state debt that the Treasurer oversees, makes us the second highest per capita debt load in the nation at the state level. So the people need and deserve a treasurer who remembers the taxpayers, that the treasurer's office is not to be used as a cookie jar or a piggy bank to fund other desires. The treasurer has a very important role in protecting the taxpayers. Those are just two of the examples. Another example would be unclaimed property, which the treasurer famously runs or doesn't run. And I had thought that unclaimed property was one of the few bright spots in the treasurer's office because I believed the propaganda she was spreading. Turns out I was contacted about a month ago by a citizen investigator named Ron Litzy out of Connecticut. Ron is very credible. He has gone around the nation analyzing unclaimed property, and he's not doing this for fun. He just does it as a public service. 25 states now actively return unclaimed property without making you jump through hoops to claim it, because there are things like social security numbers and addresses attached. It's not rocket science. California is currently considering it, and Ron's work is cited in what they're doing. Ron was responsible for Connecticut adopting this affirmative return. The treasurer for about 8 years has been saying unclaimed property is around $3.7 billion. He thinks it's actually closer to $5 billion, of which he downloaded 19 million accounts and analyzed them. $450 million of taxpayer money doesn't even appear on the state website. You have to go ask someone to go look it up randomly to see if you're part of that 450 million. Of that, at least 300 million are unclaimed property tax returns. Ron confirmed with the Department of Revenue that each of those accounts, each of those claims in the 300 million has an address and a social security number attached. All the treasurer has to do is say, yes, we'll return that money. Think about what $300 million would do for family budgets and local economies. It would be an immediate injection of cash into our economy. It would be an immediate relief. And she doesn't care. She's the heir to the Stop and Shop fortune, worth tens of millions of dollars. As I said, spends a chunk of time in her third home in Palm Beach. She's never had to pay a bill in her life. I'm the fifth of 10 children. I understand what it means. Frankly, I don't go into this a lot, but to lose a home as a child. I understand what it means to not have money to pay a utility bill. That's not where we are now. Massachusetts has been good to us, but I have not forgotten. That is where too many families are today, and taxpayers need and deserve a treasurer who remembers that and who cares.
I know many moons ago when I first got married, I used to work for the state. I was in the Department of Correction, okay?
Oh,
and
stories about that.
I can tell you a lot of stories,
Yeah.
but one of the most important thing I think is one of the women that I worked with used to brag about the fact that her husband had a no-show job. And you have to ask yourself, is that still going on? And is that why they don't want the audit? Because some of their friends have no-show jobs. Basically,
I am sure it is. I've heard about this from others as well. And in part, one of the ways that you know that is that when Charlie Baker left office and Mara Healey came in, headcount in state employment went way up. I know for a fact that this used to happen in the treasurer's office, and I think it still does happen. We are reliably informed that lottery employees only have to be in the office 2 days a week. So it's, I want to be flexible and kind to the extent that people might need some time. You can be in the office more than 2 days a week. Bob Crane, when he ran the Clean Water Trust, which is one of the 13 departments under the treasurer's office, had 150 employees to run the Clean Water Trust. When Joe Malone came in, it took 10. There were 140 people on payroll out doing Democratic Party business. So Massachusetts is closer to a purple state than people realize. You just have to look at all the Republican governors that we've elected. But one of the major reasons, and again, I told you about all the departments that had shifted from the governor to the treasurer's office. One of the major reasons that the Democratic Party does so well is they're just better funded. And they're better funded because so many of their operatives have little show, low show, or no show jobs with the state, which means there's a lot of time to build the party. The Republicans have been not so talented. I'd like to say maybe a little more ethical, a little more concerned about the public interest, not personal interest. And I think Massachusetts understands that. I actually think, first of all, November is a seminal election. If we do not change course in November, I fear that the state will reach a point of no return. We are 50th out of 50 for job creation. We're 50th out of 50 for economic development. This is not the national administration's fault. 49 other states have figured it out. What has changed for us? A movement from Charlie Baker to Mara Healey. That's what changed. So I think the 65% of the public who are unenrolled are hungry for mission-driven politicians who are not lifetime hacks, who are there to represent the people, to clean up the mess, and then get back out.
Okay, so now you talk about lifetime jobs. Let's talk about term limits.
Yeah, so
Because we don't have much
we're short
time.
time. So let me explain that the treasurer's office used to have term limits. The Constitution used to limit the treasurer to two-year terms. That changed in 1963 with Bob Crane because the legislature wanted him to use the treasurer's office for patronage. 98% of his hires were Democrats. And he did for 27 years. He ran cash businesses out of that office and distributed largesse. The incumbent, so there are now no term limits. The incumbent has been in for 12 years. She's announced she wants to beat Bob Crane's 27-year record, so that means she wants to be in office another 16 years. I think that's too much time, too much power. There's too much money. So I have committed to 2 4-year terms and no more. And part of the reason for that is my parents raised me right. I'm a person of honor and integrity. But it'll keep me on the straight and narrow if I know that at the end of 8 years, there's going to be another outside audit to look at whether or not I fulfilled my promises to the people of Massachusetts. So 2 4-year terms and I'm out. The incumbent, I think it's outrageous that she's seeking a 4th term and has announced that she wants 7 terms total. I think that's just wrong.
Well, I agree. Anyway, we're running low on time. Just give a little bit of a definition of why you want to be the treasurer, and just rehash a little bit of what we've talked about.
I'm Elizabeth Dionne, and I'm running to be your taxpayer's treasurer because I think you need and deserve a treasurer who remembers that every dollar has come out of your pocket. The most important reason that I'm running is my husband and I are the parents of 4 adult children who could not afford to live and raise their children here in Massachusetts, and neither can their friends or classmates. So I am running for the future of this state. I want a state that is affordable, that is accountable, that works for you, the taxpayers. Would love your help. Visit my website at votedionne.com, votedionne.com. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope this was educational for you. And realize you vote for somebody for policy and not party. Thanks for watching.